Today I'd like to talk about Basel III. Now, in the last few CAT reports, I've been putting some headlines with links that take you to places that are either give you a general explanation of Basel III, but really are telling you what's going on right now. And this affects the world's economy, the central banks, the price of gold. It's very important. You don't see a lot of folks reporting on it. Thomas, give us that special look into this area for us.
Well, Betsy, as you know, our listeners have asked us to elaborate on warlord bankers and brokers and their warmongering politicians, and we did. And we gave you, a 100-page report.
In fact, you say that, and just remind everybody, I'm going to put the links to the Basel reports that we've posted in the last few days, so you yourself can read about it, and also a link back to the Venetian bankers. Now, without interruption, apologies.
Now, what we didn't do was to bring you up to modern times in terms of how bad the banking is. We showed you that those same old warlord banking families have been going on since, certainly Venetian times with the Crusades and right up into modern times. But what we didn't point out is the international banking warlords, and that's what we're going to do now. Basel III is an attempt to make sure that fractional banking doesn't collapse all world currencies. Now, that sounds like a big statement. Let me explain. The Bank for International Settlements stands alone, and I'll tell you its history in a minute. But it stands alone as the bank that allows these gigantic brokers, who are all backed by bankers, to have a derivatives market. And derivatives is nothing but betting. And so basically from its inception, during the time of Hitler, basically that was Hitler's bank. When Hitler went around and stole the gold from all the different countries, he put it into the Swiss banks. He put it into Zurich, and the Bank for International Settlement was created, and it, some say, is the economic financial control of the globalists. And one could say, to a certain degree, yes, and I'll explain why in a second. The Bank for International Settlement was created to basically handle central banks. There's 189 central banks. That's almost every country in the world. And they all answer to the International Monetary Fund. And the International Monetary Fund is a component of the United Nations economic system, which also includes the World Bank and the World Trade Organization and a bunch of other banks. And these banks are nothing more. They say that it's to help developing countries. That's a lie. It's nothing more than a ripoff. Here's how the ripoff works. The Bank for International Settlements, just like in the days of Hitler didn't go after them because they had the money. Matter of fact, Switzerland didn't even have an army, and Hitler left them alone. Everything around them he destroyed and took over, but these were his bankers. They're called the Gnomes of Zurich. But really, it's ran out of Basel, and it's also ran out of CERN, because CERN is where basically the rogue intelligence groups, particularly the American-sponsored ones, actually have their headquarters. And if you want to get technical, the globalists believe that you need a military arm. That military arm is the rogue CIA working through CERN. You need a financial arm. That's the Bank for International Settlement. And then you need a religious arm. That's the House of Savoy. That's King Philip VI of Spain, who is now, they claim, is of royal direct blood lineage from Jesus Christ. You see, so that's how they tie into having a religious affiliation. So in Switzerland, you have the basis that some people say the globalists really started from, and that's where they will return, including the League of Nations, including the World Council of Churches and such other organizations. But the way that it works is this. Central banks all belong, 189 of them, to the International Monetary Fund. The International Monetary Fund basically assesses them and gives them dues, pretty much like the way that the United Nations does for its member countries. Depending upon your GDP and depending upon other factors, you're basically assessed a fee, a dues, as it were. And most of the countries part of the United Nations don't really pay those dues. The only country that actually pays them up in full is America. And so basically we have always foot the bill for the United Nations. And Trump has said that he believes that the World Trade Organization and the World Bank are corrupt, that they're rigged. He has not said anything about what happened on March 29, 2019, when they did one of their biggest scams in the Bank for International Settlements history. Now, that's big. Let's just remember, the Bank for International Settlement is where the Nazis, when they pulled the gold out of Jews' teeth, they sent that gold after they melted it down to the Bank for International Settlements. And it wasn't until recently, a few years ago, that a Jewish family, the Bronfmans, sued them, and they were able to get half of the gold.
Whoa,
to get it back.
Bronfman. I mean, that's loaded right there. Is
Yes.
that the same family with the
Yes.
sex cult and
Yes.
with liquor and all the...
Everything.
And, oh my gosh.
It doesn't really get much more
Well,
powerful or
isn't
corrupt
that
than
really
that.
what people have seen over the last few years as we've been disclosing this, is that really they're just we can name them, we can tell you who's hit the top of this pyramid, what they're doing, and how to get to them pretty easily.
A few more words about the Bank
Yeah.
for International Settlement, and then we have to go to Bretton Woods to talk about the Russian spy, Harry Dexter White, who created this crazy system. And he was put in jail for being a Russian spy afterwards. And he created it as an attack against the West. It's called Bretton Woods Agreement, 1944. And that's when these things were established, and the United Nations was given this tremendous power over all central banks in all countries must kowtow to the International Monetary Fund, who charges them dues and then gives them back what is a world currency called special drawing rights. They were trying to supplant that with carbon credits, with carbon footprints. That was to be the new tax as well as the new currency. And they were going to move it over, but now that can't happen. That's why $5 trillion was set aside by Obama to pay in to the Paris Climate Accord. $5 trillion Trump saved us by a stupid United Nations resolution. And that's what we're talking about. We're
All
talking
that, and he doesn't even take a salary.
That's right.
Isn't he just amazing?
And these people in the United Nations sit around with our enemies. And what do? They simply conspire, plot, and actively work against America.
And we, the taxpayers, pay for this.
Yes, we do. We pay out the nose, and we're the only ones who pay. So Trump has stopped money to the Blue Helmets, to the peacekeeping forces. He stopped money to the World Health Organization. He stopped money to UNESCO. He stopped money, the dues they charge us. And he said that he's going to go after the World Trade Organization and the World Bank. And in that, he would end up having to go after also then the Bank for International Settlements. Now, let me explain why this is so insane. The Bank for International Settlements, let me give you a quick example. Somebody bet, I forget what it was, $2 or $4 billion on the stock market, but it was in commodities. And so the Bank for International Settlement, it was a derivative, actually it was a derivative purchase on gold. And it was for billions of dollars, and no one could clear it. And that's what the Bank for International Settlements is there for. It's to clear banking problems, to clear banking investments, to clear banking derivative purchases, which there is a law that says if it all collapses, the first group to be paid are the people who basically gambled with their derivatives. Now, those derivatives... No one knows how much money is involved in derivatives, hundreds of trillions of dollars. And it could all collapse because of one of the banks that is centrally involved in this, which almost happened with Deutsche Bank, that it almost collapsed because of the following. Banks make their money by buying longs and shorts and derivatives and betting on commodities oftentimes in markets, particularly silver and gold. And they have a cycle with silver, so they know when it's going to go up and down. And then they manipulate gold. Okay, it was always manipulated before by the Rockefeller family, the Rothschilds through the City of London. But now it's, believe it or not, the people who own the New York Stock Exchange, Intercontinental Exchange Incorporated, which is a group that then also determines the LIBOR rate. So again, we're back to total corruption. It's just that it's not under the banner of a Rothschild. It's now under the banner of an international corporation that is the number one clearinghouse, the Intercontinental Exchange, which owns the New York Stock Exchange, the New York Commodities Exchange, the Chicago Commodities Exchange, and most of the clearinghouses that support them, also for derivatives and also in foreign countries and also in foreign markets. This company, ICE Incorporated, is just huge, has so much power. I can't even tell you how much power they have. But anyway, so they're directly the manipulators of the Bank for International Settlements at this point. And so one of their banks, no one ever knew, came up short on one of their derivative bets. And so the Bank for International Settlements said, oh no, we're not going to clear that. So they held it for 4 days, and then somebody out of somewhere sold the exact amount, a little bit more than the exact amount that was needed so that bank, Deutsche Bank, well, we believe it's Deutsche Bank, didn't go under because of their derivatives.
How long ago was this? What are we talking about? Days,
2 years
weeks,
ago.
2 years? Okay. All right.
This is happening now. These banks are insolvent if you look at their derivative exposure.
It's a shell game right now.
And the Bank for International Settlement is not only a stealer of gold from people's teeth and they won't give it back to them. That's also where the Marcos gold went. Oh, Lordy. So they handled the Marcos gold. They handled the Hitler gold. Okay, so these aren't rumors. They handled even parts of the Yamashita gold. No one even knows how much money that was. How much money that is. We know that now at the Zurich airport, you can taxi to this one end of the Zurich airport and drop your gold off in the gold bullion, the numbered gold bullion vaults of Zurich, because they no longer have numbered accounts in Switzerland because it's illegal. And so they made it numbered gold bullion accounts that no one can figure out who owns. And that's where the entire thing happens that I'm about to tell you, which is just insane.
And of course, we know that you're not prone to conspiracy theories because a lot of people do discuss this place at the end of the airport. This is for real.
You can go get films of them unloading, loading, and unloading. No, it's quite real. And but to call them the gnomes of Zurich, that goes back forever. I mean, this is where the Venetian bankers first came to. And that's why the Savoys ended up in Switzerland and why they actually have a claim to Jerusalem. And that's why they could be the religious and the political, military, economic, and religious control center of globalism. Basically, they have been.
Running all of their IT through CERN.
Yes. Which is, of course, the headquarters for the rogue CIA, which controls basically all war. And so when you talk about the military branch, that is it. We've spent, nobody knows how much money. More money has been spent on CERN than any other scientific endeavor in history. So going back, the Bank for International Settlement did something recently I'm going to tell you about. But first, 189 central banks all kowtow to the IMF. Now, we told you what was about to happen. That's what we love. We love to sit around in our conclave and talk with our team members and really eat this up so that we know where it's going, so why we can laugh. Remember, what is Aim for Truth? Aim for Truth's image is Odin and Frigg sitting around betting on what the humans below them are going to end up doing. And so they make bets, and
That's
they both
what we
have
do.
access to wisdom. One has access to the well of wisdom. The other one has access, well, there's two wells of wisdom. And so they bet, right? So the team and the conclave and all of us sit around, and I'm probably the most vocal to...
You're Odin, hands down.
Well, but I make the most vocal predictions because I think it through. I do a little research, and then I, try to show that I'm ahead of the game. So here's what happened. This is just unfreaking believable. We predicted that this was going to happen. We predicted that they would figure out that climate change was a complete myth. It's insane. It's the opposite of what they say. We've entered into a mini ice age, exactly as the Maunder cycle has indicated. Watch the sun and watch the temperature of the ocean, and then you see the climate. They're watching the climate. They're doing it all backwards. So anyway, we pointed all of this out. That what was about to happen was they were going to change from special drawing rights of the International Monetary Fund, which was basically a global currency, if they could just get those 7 other countries to have a central bank, and if they could really calculate how much gold there was in the world, which I'll go to in a second, then they could control it all. But they can't do either one of those two things. 189 countries all buy into this, but only some of them have really big returns on the IMF dues they pay, and that's a political committee of 22 people who decide who gets this money. as if they're trying to help people. And so they pulled China in. Both Russia and China have been members for quite some time, but they pulled China just in 2016 in and basically insinuated that if they had enough gold, that they could, run a gold currency, gold-backed currency. And they did the same to Russia. But Russia doesn't kowtow to central bank, the Bank for International Settlements, tells the IMF what to do, which tells all central banks what to do, which tell all banks what to do, which basically controls all the money in your pocket. So no matter whether you know it or not, the decisions in Switzerland are affecting you. And the one I'm about to tell you that happened on March 29th, 2019 is so mind-boggling, I have to do this build-up for it.
But remind you haven't heard it on Fox News, have you?
No.
No.
Matter of fact, most of these reports come out of Russia. So, and other countries, because they're fighting this. And we told you this fight was going on. It's been going on since we've been on the air, and we've been telling you about it. So, and we also told you about the magical Shanghai Mystery Yamashita gold.
Yes.
8,000 metric tons of gold just appeared in the Shanghai district of China, where basically everything's illegal. They can do anything you want. It's all lawless. It's just like Obama, Hillaryville. Okay? So if you're a Chinese, you get 17% added onto everything. So if you become a Chinese nationalist, where's Hillary now?
Weeds. You're in the weeds.
Hillary is in Shanghai. That's where she moved her certification authorization company and other companies. That's why she tried to do the Singapore deal with Broadcom. Because here's what happened. China tried to muscle into the IMF because China is like a bull in a china cabinet. Haha. And they don't have any finesse when it comes to politics. They don't know how to lie. They just blatantly lie and then blatantly, instantaneously do the opposite. So, what did they do? They said, well, we went into the IMF. We want more special drawing rights. In other words, they saw what was coming. And because they needed to get the IMF to start giving them more money and more special drawing rights. Why? Because the new climate change nonsense, carbon footprint tax, new international currency, they wanted to get their value up in the IMF so that then when it shifted over, because all the money was going to go to China. Guess what? $400 million of the first payment for the Paris Climate Accord was to go to China, basically, and a couple other countries, because they're underdeveloped. Isn't that nice? We were to pay China. That was the first step of climate change. Unbelievable. Anyway, so China magically comes up with 8,000 metric tons. Okay, wait a second, they came up with 7,000, I believe, because we have 8,100, whatever. And they had to have as much as we did so that they could match us, because right now our gold doesn't cover, and this is key point, our gold doesn't cover how much fiat currency we have out there. And we are the number one currency. We're always above 90% of all currency exchanges, including oil. And so the concept of petrodollar is really universal dollar. Any business you were doing, including China and Russia, was done in dollars, especially for oil. Hello? Russia was handling more oil through Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkestan, all those, and Russia, than anybody. And so they said, well, we want the ruble to be recognized as a special drawing, as a recognized currency in the IMF. And they said, no, you don't have enough gold. So China said, the yuan isn't recognized, and we want it to be recognized. They said, you don't have enough gold. So China started first off fabricating fake gold and selling it to other nations and trading it and getting gold back. That's the reason Canada's gold reserves went from 1,000 metric tons to zero, basically. Who do they sell it to? The Chinese. So Chinese went up 1,000. They still have, they're like 10th on the list. So Shanghai Gold Exchange supposedly manifested somehow made us equal 7,000 metric tons. And then we found out what later? Because people pressured them, and because there's this gold standard group that goes to assess gold, these fake, lying, disgusting auditors who are behind all bankers and behind all brokers are disgusting auditors and accountants, okay? Those are the most evil people on the earth because they lie with the figures that kill people. Anyway, they went there and said, You can't have that gold. Where'd you get it? And then they found out that they withdrew the whole thing, and that 7,000 metric tons of gold just vanished in thin air. And the Chinese now say it's not in their gold reserves. They're back to the same number they had before, except for the gold they bought from China.
Okay.
From Canada.
Okay. I can see people like going, what the heck did you just say?
You have to know this.
Okay.
Now.
Well, can you just call that down into a couple of, like a tight sentence? What is exactly am I supposed to extract from all of that?
China tried to get in the IMF and muscled them with fake gold.
Okay.
Getting
Yes.
ready for the exchange into carbon footprint tax.
Okay. Another question. If Canada sold them, did Canada sell them all its gold?
Pretty much.
Pretty much.
Their reserves.
Well, that's not going to be good for Canadians when this whole reset stuff is happening.
Well, Frank Giustra, the gold king of Canada,
yes.
and Barrick Gold are both fake gold.
Yes.
That's all paper gold. That's lie. That is Adnan Khashoggi and George Daddy Bush is Barrick Gold, all fake. And then you have the gold. Frank Giustra's the money behind Uranium One. He gave $100 million to Clinton for that deal, to Bill Clinton.
Did Canada sell real gold to China or paper gold?
Well, this is what's funny.
Okay, because folks, we are assuming that you understand this to a level that you're into this 20 minutes, that paper gold is really fiat currency tied to nothing.
The gold bullion vault in the city of London, owned by the Rothschilds, on every ounce of gold they have 30 paper gold notes written on it. So, in other words, they say it's worth 30 times because it's called fractional banking. I'm going to go there in a second.
When derivatives get so out of control like that, they're no longer attached to anything. It's just a huge illusion. And it's the same thing that happens with the internet. We push this out and then other people pick it up and people pick it up and it goes on and out, and the information gets to a point where you can't track back influence to where it originated. And this is what they didn't understand when they started to weaponize the internet, that it would be very easy for people out here, these little in the grass, little people like us, to be able to send it out and influence such large groups of people. And they can't control that. And that's what's happening with this gold thing. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Let's look at Venezuela. It says to Britain, give us our gold. And they say, nope, can't give it to you because the auditors have to audit it. The insurance has to have a complete insurance package to show that it can get it there and be insured across the ocean or in an airplane. So we can't really get an insurance package for you. So in other words, Canada, China, even America, and certainly the city of London said, give us your gold, we'll protect it, and you can't get it back. And this has been demonstrated. We talked about this again and again. The gold in China, Nova Scotia, and the gold in their banks, they had 2 gold banks. There's only a few places you can buy and exchange gold on a large scale. That was Canada, China, not even America, and basically that was it, okay? So, because why? They don't want you to get in contact with gold. So what happened? A really rich person said to this company, the largest gold exchange in Canada, I want my gold. And they said, well, we can't give it to you because the auditors, the insurance, the bank, and if we did, then it would cost you as much money as you've deposited for us to be able to release it to you. So therefore, go ahead, request it. We give you our bill, and then we don't give you any gold. That's the way that works.
Yes.
That's the reason the gold in Canada went to zero in all of their banks, and this man went in and said, show me my gold. And you know what they said? It's not here. And he says, well, whose gold is that in that pin? And they said, well, that belongs to Britain. See, so the Queen isn't going to lose her gold.
Because she's got the golden share in the end.
And so Canada went to zero in their reserves, which is just the stupidest thing ever, especially knowing that we were going towards a gold-backed currency. Now, what has happened? Oh, I could go into this forever. Russia and China both tried to have a gold-backed yuan and a gold-backed ruble. What happened? Nothing. China couldn't get the gold together. Russia doesn't have the gold together. Nobody will sell it. Except for Canada sold it to China, so China could play the game. And China, basically, they ripped them off. So anyway, they tried to get them to be more powerful in the IMF. But if your ruble is not recognized as a world currency and exchanged by the IMF, then you're basically left out of the party. If your Chinese yuan is not part of the party, you are totally left out. So they promised China, we'll bring the yuan in. They did. China, under the false pretenses they had all this new gold, then they found out they didn't have the gold. Now they could kick them out if they wanted to, so Trump could basically say, you lied to the IMF about your gold reserves, you're out. That means you're out of the World Bank, you're out of the World Trade Organization, and they don't participate so much in the world. Their central bank does not. All central banks don't answer equally to the Bank for International Settlements. It depends on whether they're doing stupid things like fractional banking to ridiculous levels, which I must address next because that's the main point of this talk, or the other criminal activities that bankers take. Now, the Bank for International Settlement on March 29th, 2019, hang on, just told every single bank that's part of their network, 189 banks, that the gold they have is worth twice as much money.
And that means, folks, the gold you have is worth twice as much.
Perhaps, but maybe not for a while, depending upon how those bankers spin it. And this is what nobody knows. They did this, everybody's eyes are closed. This has only happened once in history, and that's when we changed the value of the gold coin in America, and basically created a fund that we then used ever since then, called the Exchange Stabilization Fund. Because when you value gold up to double the price, that should have just destroyed every economy in the world if it was in the open market. But it's not in the open market. It's only in what these central bankers say are their reserves for fractional banking. Now, this is extraordinarily complicated stuff. But take my word for it, the entire world just got scammed. Because not only did they just double the value for all the inside bankers, so those bankers could then say, because they have new rules coming up as of that same date, actually as of January the 1st of 2019, where they had to bring their fractional reserves, their assets behind their fractional reserves, up to a level that's 4 times greater so that we will not have an economic collapse like we almost had last time and America had to bail everybody out.
Oh, so this is their new creative way of bailing themselves out.
Correct.
They increase the value of gold, and if the stock market crashes, or let's just say that all of the shares that they have owned, because remember now bankers can be brokers, so they've got all this money tied up in a stock market. If it goes down, what do their balance sheets look like? So what they've done is this arrangement where gold is twice as much, which improves the balance sheet, which then offsets the losses they're going to have. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep.
Well, this is so conniving. So, like last time they did it through the housing market scam.
Yep.
How interesting.
Now remember, they own all those bad mortgages.
Yes, of course.
The central banks, the banks I'm talking about, own gold, and oftentimes the very reserves I'm speaking about, the gold reserves of a nation, may be in their national central bank system, like we have the U.S. Federal Reserve. And we use them for currency exchange back and forth, blah, 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 and all this crazy stuff, which is all a fake. It's all completely fake. We don't owe them a dime. We need to go bankrupt on them. Let them go bankrupt, private corporation, but first take the gold. Because we allow the U.S. Federal Reserve and certain central banks to hold our gold for currency exchanges. And this is all scam. Now, here's what happens, and this is what makes me so upset. How did the mortgage stock market crash happen? Because of auditors and insurance agents that said that that things were AAA that were B. In other words, bad mortgages, subprime mortgages. They bundled them up to kill the stock market.
And they digitalized everything. You can't even get a copy of your deed anymore in your house.
ICE owns your deed as a digit that they will change that digit to whatever bank tells them to change that digit to when they're told, because the banks all belong to a group called MERS, and MERS, the mortgage group, is owned by ICE.
And that is another huge topic. But going back to the banks, now, Chase has so much silver. What's going to happen with silver in all this? Was that factored in?
Well, here's the deal. The IMF will probably go to a basket of commodities because they basically tried to get all the gold of everybody out in the open. And we even saw China make gold out of thin air. Literally manufacture lead, cover it with gold, and sell it to other nations as gold. counterfeit gold with insane from China, and then we have that 7,000 metric tons showing up, and then them being told that's all fake. So they had to do all that to get the gold on the table, because there is a gold organization that supposedly keeps track of the gold above the ground, gold below the ground. The gold below the ground is all a scam. Never ever buy paper gold. It's fake. There are entire gold companies that have no gold. They have dead mines like Barrick and like there's many of them. Anyway, don't buy gold unless it's in your hand, okay? And if you buy coined gold, then remember, what just happened was just astounding that people won't even realize this happened. Gold was turned into an international currency on March 29th, 2009, and it was doubled for those who had the gold, but only if you're in a central bank and only if you use it. And the only reason you would ever use it in a central bank is on your balance sheet, as you say, as an asset that an auditor comes and says, yes, you have this much gold, it's worth this much money. Those auditors...
Well, wait a minute. The auditor has to price this at the market price of gold. So you can't have two prices for gold. The central banks have this price and the average people over here have this price. Boy, that's a con.
No. But it can't. It's for the central banks, it's a double value for creating fractional banking assets. So it does for them, it is as good as gold. Mm-hmm. It's as good as money. It's as gold as, boom, you got it. From one day to the next, their gold assets, which they didn't tell anybody they were going to double, they doubled. What if you were in on that deal? Now, mind you, what did we just see? Venezuela, that has more money than anybody and more, we don't even know how much gold, sent it to London for safekeeping, and London won't send it back. What has been happening in America? We've been exchanging gold with Germany, with Deutsche Bank, with HBSC, with Swiss banks.
That's James Comey and Robert Mueller and I'm sorry. Yeah. See, it's all a small club.
Oh, Mueller and Comey have so much money in offshore accounts they can't count it. They don't want to count it because someone might catch them counting it. So the gold that is out there, they're trying to get on the table, but they don't want to admit that many corporations that were set up by rogue CIA and foreign intelligence, and all you have to do is look at the Panama Papers and you'll see hundreds, if not thousands, of those corporations. They hide that gold. But when it comes time for audit, they all have audits on different times of the year. You ever notice that with different corporations? And what do? They move the gold around. So one day it's in this corporation of mine and they count it as my asset, and then I move it and then the auditor comes and counts it as my asset over there. Well, that's what happens to gold every single day in the U.S. Federal Reserve, is they move it from one place to the next. There's actually this building, and they move, literally physically move gold in supposed currency exchange. That's insane. First off. Second off, we didn't know anybody any gold. And no one would tell us that these gold boats were taking gold, and of course they're the most armored vehicles on the face of the earth, and they were taking gold to Europe and moving. When you move gold large amounts, it's a huge friggin' deal and everybody knows, but they wouldn't tell us who's moving the gold which way. Whose gold is it? That's why Mnuchin went, as you always point out, to the mint as one of his first deeds to say, show me the gold. And what we need to do, the U.S. Fed, is grab the gold, freeze their assets.
Yes, because the gold is the people's gold. It's
Correct.
Not the corrupt Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is a private corporation. They look, if you just bring it down to the essence of what it is, it's in the business of printing something called fiat currency. They print something, like you would go to a printer and you get stationery. Well, the Federal Reserve prints their stationery, but the government says this is the currency that all of us have to recognize. Well, we just need our government to say we don't want to recognize it anymore because it's not based on anything. And then get the gold, just like what Italy is doing.
Exactly. When Italy just said the gold that's in their reserves belong to the people, we're simply going to take and give it to them, that's because it doesn't belong to their central bank assets, because it shouldn't. It shouldn't. The gold in the mint and the gold in the U.S. Fed shouldn't even be there. It should belong to the U.S. Treasury. Now,
and we need to snag the money from Chase, the silver they've collected. And I don't want to go into all that, but Chase is actually an agent of the government. And so there's something that could be done with that silver.
Oh, we can...
But that's another subject.
Silver manipulation is a huge thing, and that's the way that the two biggest banks in America actually balance their sheets by manipulating silver, every single year. Now, when you go to the bank and you ask for $10,000 in cash, they're not going to give it to you, and the FBI may show up. That ain't your money, even when you have it in a bank. If you want fiat currency, or you want, let's say you got gold somewhere that you've bought gold and it's held there, go ahead, go try get it. Go try to get your gold from any place that says they're holding you physical gold. You're not going to get it. They're going to charge you so many surcharges that it will be whatever the amount is of gold that you have there. This has happened to person after person.
Yeah.
They put it in the newspaper and out in the news, and we have talked about this. So don't believe for 1 second. And don't believe that even if you have that cash in your hand, that's the cash that's going to be good tomorrow. Because we've already told you how right there in your $100 bill, it clearly says that the previous ugly green ones, those belong to the Fed. The new pretty ones, those belong to the Treasury. Just look at your bills.
It's the $100 bill. We pointed it out a long time ago that the transition looked like it was already in play. Look, if you have paper gold, the best way to do is don't go to where you think the source is. Just go ahead and sell it, get your fiat currency, and then go down to your coin shop and get your physical gold. That's the easiest way to do it. But when you're there, and this is very instructive, especially if you have children that are old enough to be interested in money, is have the coin dealer show you the books that they keep on all the currencies. These would be currencies that have become obsolete, like your Confederate dollar bills and stuff. And it's really amazing because when you see all these currencies in time that have gone belly up, you realize that the Federal Reserve really is only as good and solid as we, the people of the United States, allow it to be.
We were a heartbeat from Hillary Clinton becoming president, at which point there would be no more money in any country, only digits. And if they said you had them, you had them. And if they said you don't, you don't. And your social credit score, which is also a digit like we see in Dragonfly in China, they would simply allow you or not allow you to have the money that you may have earned. That's the way they intended it to be. It is called aggressive remote control, and we've already shown you the patents on it and so on and so forth, and this includes banking, and that's the reason they want to take currency out of
circulation.
And the populace, the nationalists, and they want to have one currency. This is what they've been trying to do since 1944 when Henry Dexter White set up a communist form of world global control called the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the World Trade Organization, and all its subsidiary groups as they kowtow to the Bank for International Settlements. And when they just doubled the gold, only for them, now it's double for them, only for the bankers. Imagine that. Do you know how much money that is? No one can calculate. But what was about to happen, and this is how we can end this, Hillary Clinton was going to bomb Damascus and go to war with North Korea. It was in the plans of the intelligence community that she keeps quoting, the 17 intelligence communities. Go read it. You'll blow your mind. It's called the Paradigm of Progress. And that's the one that they quote all the time. And it predicted, also Trump, it predicted that the far left would have been the direction to go last time in 2016. She didn't go far left enough.
Of course, the predictions weren't by their names. It was by the type of person that would emerge on the national front.
Yeah, by ideology, they told exactly who would win. So what we have here is the fact that there was going to be total chaos. And during that chaos, we were going to have the gold come out of Zurich. They can't bring all that gold out at once. And I'm not even going to tell you how much gold it is, though we have a fairly good estimate because this gold has been tracked through history. And people will tell you, about the White Lotus Society and about the tigers and all, blah, blah, blah. No, we're looking at just the way the money flowed, period. We don't care about all those big ideas of who found it in the Philippines and how it got there and Imelda Marcos and the Marcoses and what's happening in the Philippines now and, what the Yamashita gold, which the Japanese took from the... Why do you think the Chinese had no gold reserves? The Japanese stole it. Oh, well, where is it? Where are the gold reserves of China and Japan that they had time immemorial? Where is it? Well, we know where it went. But it went to Zurich, and it's in Zurich. If that gold would have come out of the Zurich banks, at any one moment, it would overwhelm the economy of the world and cause everything to go to half price because so much is determined by gold. So they had to hang on to that gold, but it's been used for assets and for valuations and for audits and insurance purposes by all of the CIA rogue corporations. We can name them. We have named them. We've named the banks that this gold has banked, has been behind. This is what they built it on. They shift this gold around. Sometimes it goes back to Zurich. Sometimes it comes out. But it didn't come out because Hillary didn't get elected. And now they didn't know what to do because they'd already banked on that. That was already part of their plan, that gold was going to be double value for them, you see? But what happened? Only double value for the central banks. And only then, that's why gold hasn't gone up. And only then because they use it in banking scams and tricks, almost like a Ponzi. They use gold as a Ponzi scheme also.
And this is what Basel III is.
Yes.
Because I know we only said Basel III at the beginning of the audio, but we've come full circle now.
When they said fractional banking, you know that a bank, you know how much, this is unbelievable. The central banks give out all this money. And you know how much they have to back it up? 2.5%. So if anything happened, it's all collapsing, and that's what they saw last time, and that's why we had to bail them out. So it was supposed to go up to 8% and then 4 times that. Well, they couldn't do it because
it would collapse the economy.
Well, it would collapse those banks and their profits. You see, if they don't pay 2.5%, but they pay 32%, if they have 32% of their assets in the bank to back them up in case there's a run on the money or there's a problem, or they call it a liquidity issue. In other words, that they have to have money because banks don't even have the money that you give them. And if you try to get it from them, they get really mad. Let's say you go in your bank, you got $100,000 and you want to get $50,000. Go ahead, try that.
Good luck.
They're not going to.
Good luck.
The FBI is going to show up before that money shows up. Mark my words.
Yes.
They do it for $10,000. They do it for $5,000, and now they're doing it for $2,000. But anyway, going back to this. This is a criminal enterprise of turning gold only for the central bankers into double. This is the goose that laid the golden egg. This is the gold that multiplied itself. This is magic gold out of thin air. Why? Because they couldn't come up with any assets to cover their expenditures and their, the fact that they don't have the money that they're supposedly holding for you. They only had less, in many cases, than 2.5%. Now, over a period of years, they had to come up to 8% last year and 4 times that this year.
But what happens when we, the people, know about this scam?
But the gold just got doubled in value. Well, so guess what? They bought gold directly from the rogue CIA Zurich banks. Go back to the logs and watch the planes coming out as fast as possible in the last few months, and they are all going to where central banks who bought that, and guess what? They doubled their money overnight.
Okay, is anything that's... I want to know what we the people can do about this. I mean...
Nothing. You don't have a central bank.
What?
You don't have a central bank. You can't do a thing about it.
I know we the people don't have a central bank. But is the knowledge of this happening going to help us in any way? Is there anything in what you've said that our elected officials or people who actually care about America
if Donald and Melania hear this and they act on it, it could be the biggest thing ever because it gives them the justification for defaulting on the odious debt of the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve...
Take your time, explain exactly how and why that would be.
Because this is fraud.
Okay, but articulate, what is that fraud?
The fraud is they doubled it for central bankers and not for the rest of us. We can't buy into that gold. Only them.
Well, do they have special rules and laws for them that allow them to do it and it's not applicable to the
They
little
had
people?
a law, they just broke it and they just made it, there was a law, but they just abnegated it like crazy.
Okay, because they abnegated it. Now, all of it's null and void.
Correct. They just doubled the price of gold to themselves.
Go back. If you were speaking to someone who could do something about this, what would you say?
Okay, Donald and Melania, all you have to say is...
And by the way, the reason he says that, Thomas always says Melania is the smart one.
Melania is listening to us and gives a report to Donald every day. That's my assessment. Okay, I don't know if anybody... No, they're laughing at me. They're laughing at me. Okay, but the point is I'm certain that it's true, and I don't care what anybody says. Because... Melania is a genius. She doesn't sit with her husband for 3 hours at a table. He doesn't sit for 3 hours with anybody, not world leaders. If God came to Mar-a-Lago,
That's his wife.
he would not sit for 3 hours with a dinner with God. He sits and listens to Melania, and all the reporters are going nuts because she's doing all the talking. How is that possible? Because she's the smart one. She knows how many languages? She's super smart. Anyway, the point is, she worked the system as well as he did. Remember that.
In a good
She
way.
became the queen of her system as he became the queen of his system.
Q. Is Melania Q?
No, there is no Q. Q
Okay, it's a
Q,
lark.
Q,
We're all
no. Q was Cicada 3301
Okay.
to begin with, and since then there's been 4 other iterations, and there was a new one started just 2 days
I
ago.
know, we're fine with it.
And it's all good because
all
they're
good.
quoting us. They're quoting the very URLs that we already have posted 2 days before.
We're never going to bash Q again now in its current iteration
Read-
because it says it's a LARP and hey, have fun and learn a lot. But if we see that rogue factions are coming in and leading the group in a way that is not towards truth, we're going to speak up about it.
Their last post, which was in clear English, go back 4 or 5 audios and you will hear me saying exactly those words. And you will hear them justifying it. It sounds like they are literally listening to the audio, stopping it, giving their response by writing it, listen to the audio. It looks like notes they took. Word, concept for concept, okay? We like them when they do that. They have quoted us over 400 times.
Back to Melania.
Okay, Melania is the genius. Now, for gold,
Gold.
okay, we are being ripped off royally. So you go to the U.S. Federal Reserve and you say, Jerome Powell, once I appoint 4 new people, he's already appointed another one the other day and another one.
But they have to be approved.
Yeah,
and
but-
guess what? Mitt Romney doesn't like Herman Cain.
During the
Oh, man.
second, it's okay, during the second term, he'll get everything that he wants. See, because the globalists will realize they've lost. At the moment that he wins that night, which he will, with his landslide vote, the globalists will know they've lost. Right now, they're trying everything they can. The Queen is considering inviting him over so that she can probably, in my opinion, poison him like she tried last time. But you
Promise.
noticed
We've
he
already
didn't
talked about
drink
that.
anything. People offered him things.
Yes. But back to the gold.
Okay.
We want to know about the gold.
So, if you were smart and you were a central bank and you knew this ahead of time, wouldn't you have bought gold? And wouldn't you buy it from any source you could? That's what caused them to adjust. The rogue CIA gold was supposed to come out during the chaos of the Clinton attack on Damascus, which would have started World War Armageddon, and an attack on North Korea, which would have started World War III with China and Russia. You see? And during that chaos is when the gold was supposed to come out because no one would have noticed because the economies of the world would have gone into absolute chaos. And during wartime, like when we were hit by 911, they broke all the rules. They broke every banking rule, every SEC rule, every rule there was for a week. I'm not going to go into that. But when there is an attack, when there is a false flag, when there is the beginning of a war, the chaos is there for a George Soros to come and do exactly what he planned to do, because he would buy short on your currency and he would make a fortune now, wouldn't he? He bought short on the stock market for Trump $1 billion. Had the stock market crashed, he would have made, who knows how much money. So
What do we need to do to take down the Fed?
you go to the Fed, you say, Jerome Powell and the Fed, first off, I'm putting sanctions on you. Freeze all currency exchange. The U.S. Treasury will do it. Freeze all stock manipulation. 1/3 of their assets are on the New York Stock Exchange. That should be illegal. It would be if we had the proper laws. Bankers being brokers, brokers being bankers, illegal. It's an oxymoron. Only a stupid person could agree
And
to
it
it.
only leads to warmongering.
Period. And then you would say, we're going to freeze your assets, and then we're going to audit you. We're going to take back our gold, and then we're going to audit you. And then we're going to find out how much is in your 12 central banks, freeze all of them in America. So the 13 banks are frozen, and we see we audit them, and then we take back what's ours. And then because they're a private corporation, once we take back what's ours, we don't care what happens to them. They will ultimately go bankrupt. Who are we bankrupting? Morgan, Rockefeller, Rothschild?
Woohoo!
These are the people we're bankrupting. Now
How about these people on the Privy Council that work to try to overthrow Donald Trump?
Oh, they all are invested in the Fortune 500,
Yes.
which is nothing
Take 'em
more
down.
than the bankers who took over the Federal Reserve from the beginning, and they bought. And any company with the word black in it is usually Blackstone. Any of the Blackstone companies, how many of those? 35 of them. That's all CIA gold. So the gold doesn't have to come out of the Zurich Nome banks at the end of the Zurich runway, which you can watch all day long as they're loading up the gold. Nobody's buying gold now. Nobody's going to sell you any gold, probably, but because they're going to be all wondering what in the world's going to happen. No one knows what this is going to do to the world currency. This is an experiment, and the Bank for International Settlement, World War I and II were an experiment for the Swiss, okay? And they weren't involved in either one, and not a single shot was fired on their grounds.
Yeah, but now you let the cat out of the bag, and we've got thousands of people around the world that'll know this intelligence.
Well, anytime you can buy gold and silver coins, if it is recognized by your country as a currency as it is here in America. And that's what Betsy was talking about, another whole show. But if you're talking about gold bullion, don't ever hold gold bullion paper. Hold gold bullion solid. And gold could go up, could go down. Who knows? It depends on the stock market. Look what happened to Bitcoin a few days ago. Look what happened when it started. We don't know. This is experiments. Bitcoin was experimented by Jamie Dimon and the rest of the bankers. The gold with the Bank for International Settlements is going to be experimented in the next few months, and we're going to see what happens. But right now, it seems as if everyone has a blinder on, and there ain't a person in the world that knows this even happened, that they doubled the value of gold if you happen to be a central banker. Holy heavens. Never in history has anything like this ever happened. So why is no one speaking of it? Because the bigger the lie, the easier it is to believe.